Hello there, I'm pleased to introduce you to a really good friend of mine, Nina. Nina has been vegan for a couple of years now,
just
is that
over
right?
2, yeah.
And I think she has a really interesting story, and I just wanted to invite her here today so that she could share that and, you know, talk a little bit about the challenges and the benefits that she's experienced on a vegan lifestyle. So thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Okay, so when did you realise that you really wanted to be vegan, or at least give it a try?
I think for many years, starting from my childhood, I knew there was something not quite right about eating animals and their byproducts and things. And I think it first started for me when I was I maybe 14, and just the thought of having an egg was the yuckiest thing, and I can't explain why. I don't know if it was the texture or just the thought of what it was. And of course, you know, I was a good daughter. I still ate what I was told to eat and all those kinds of things. And then at about 16, I asked my parents if I could go vegetarian, because I just knew within myself I didn't want to eat meat. And they were very good in their way, and they said it was okay, but of course none of us really knew how to feed a vegetarian. So my mother continued to make the same meals as usual, and just I had the side veg, and that was it. So I became quite lethargic and not very well, and so, you know, she insisted I eat normally again.
Because your family is Iranian, right?
Well, my mother's Iranian, yeah, and my father's English, so I had the best of both worlds. And so it didn't go so well. But then once I started university and I met my now husband, he was already a vegetarian, and that was quite attractive and exotic. And so I started being a vegetarian then. And when you're catered for in university, it's so much easier. You don't have to worry too much about what you're cooking. And we continued to be vegetarian for 7 years until we moved to Spain. And I love Spain. It holds a very special place in my heart. But there's only so many times you can go out for dinner and eat an omelette before you realise this is too difficult. And I didn't know about veganism then. I didn't have a community of vegetarians or vegans around me to support me in that. So we went back to eating as omnivores. And it wasn't until I came to Thailand that I was introduced to the vegan lifestyle and a community of people that could help me on that journey. And so that was what really did it for me.
Awesome. Cool, thanks. Were there any other reasons behind why you go or stay vegan?
Absolutely. I think when I initially started on the road to veganism, I think, funnily enough, that the animals was what made me go vegetarian all those years back. But it was actually health that made me think of going vegan. And it was because of watching the documentary Forks Over Knives. And that really clicked with me. And so I'm someone who enjoys trying to be healthy and fit, and so that was something that really clicked with me. And it was only then that the animal part came back into my life, because, you know, as an omnivore, you often block out what you know to be true, and so I'd gotten very good at that. And it was only when it was, you know, put in front of my face again that I realised that I can't ignore that. And then thirdly, watching Cowspiracy and just the environmental impact that eating an omnivore's diet has was, so for me it's threefold. It's health, it's animals, and it's the planet. And I can't ignore all three.
So you gave veganism a try. You did like a little challenge or something, and then you went back to, you know, eating animal products and for a little while. So and so it took a while for you to sort of commit, I guess, to veganism. So what was it that finally persuaded you to do that?
Well, I think in order to answer that, I need to talk about why I gave it up as such to start with. So I did a 30-day vegan challenge, and I loved it, so I continued it, and I did it for 2 months. And then I suddenly found out I was pregnant with my second child, and I was very excited about veganism, and I knew I could do it, but I wasn't knowledgeable enough and confident enough to have a vegan pregnancy. And so I went back to eating what I used to eat, and it was when my son was about 3 months old that I then decided, right, that's it, I'm going back. And in hindsight, it would have been great if I'd had a vegan pregnancy. Should I get pregnant again, I obviously would have a vegan pregnancy, but that's just, it's a transition, it's a process. And I think one of the biggest things is that people get caught up in this idea of being perfect, and that, you know, tomorrow I'm going to be vegan and boom, I'm going to lead this perfect life of compassion and do everything right. And it's not life, it's not realistic. So yeah, I've had many, you know, fallbacks and trips and stumbles, but that's what's made me more knowledgeable today and made me secure in the choice that I've made. So.
Oh, yeah, fantastic. You know, I think we often give up on people so quickly, you know, or they gave it a try and then they quit, and then, you know, it can be often a really nice surprise when just a little bit later sort of people come back. And I mean, it's really scary, the idea of, especially when you're so new to it, having a vegan pregnancy. I mean, you've got to be really careful. Everyone needs to be careful when they're pregnant. So, you know, I think you made the best decision that you could with the information you had at the time. Yeah,
well, what is done is done. Yeah. And I think one thing that I think everybody needs to bear in mind is we have to remember our journey. We have to remember the struggles, because that's what's going to help us to connect to people that are not even on this journey yet, or maybe open to it, because we didn't just become vegan overnight, and we did used to eat meat and animal products. So we have to just remember that it is a process and it takes time.
I agree. So you have a family, you have a wonderful husband and 2 lovely children, both quite young. Yep. So how did you and your family navigate this transition? So how's that going?
It's a minefield, but it's one that I enjoy being in. Yeah. So my choice to be vegan is my choice, and I believe we can't enforce our will on others, and nor should we. My husband is very accepting of my choices and very supportive.
That's great. That's great.
He's been to a few, you know, obviously he comes to vegan restaurants with me, and he's watched some documentaries with me and so on, but he has different views, and I still love him regardless of that. Our home is meat free and free of cow's milk as well. And he is an omnivore, although all our evening meals are vegan. So our family sit-down meal is always a vegan one, or vegetarian sometimes. And the children are vegetarian. And I deliberately made that choice for a few reasons. It would have been very easy for me to make my son vegan. However, my daughter was already an omnivore, and she was 4 at the time, I think. And I wanted her to be comfortable with the choice. I didn't want to force it upon her. And so we had lots of talks. I bought some great books by Ruby Roth, and we had lots of great discussions about why Mummy eats the way she eats. And she decided she wanted to be vegetarian. And I thought that's a great stepping stone. And I don't want it to be difficult for her with friends when she's at birthday parties or at school events and so on. And she will occasionally ask for a vegan meal or a vegan sandwich, and she knows the difference. And for me, that's the most important thing, because I want my children to grow up and make these choices for themselves. I often think that if you force a child to do something when they're younger, they're going to rebel more against it when they're older. So, I chose for the children to be vegetarian. That's where we are right now, and I think we're making steps towards more vegan lifestyles every day. You know, my husband was okay with us completely cutting out cow's milk, and so there's only soy milk or oat milk or almond milk in the house, and and I just, it's a step-by-step thing. And at the end of the day, it would be great if my whole family were vegan, but it's also good for me to realize that we're living in a world full of people with mixed views and diets and that kind of thing. And so if I can make my family work in a harmonious way when we have all these variety of views and dietary requirements, then there's hope for all of us.
I think that's a really great point. You know, so many people say, well, I can't become vegan because my partner isn't interested in that. And, you know, here is a great example of you following your path and them following their own, but also sort of making changes. So, I think that can be really inspiring and helpful to lots of people.
And I think it's also a sneaky way of educating people without you telling them, because often if I was to tell my husband, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, or you shouldn't, he's not going to listen to me. But I'll often listen to podcasts out loud in the kitchen, and he'll walk in and hear the same things I'm hearing, but it's not from me, so he's more likely to take it on. And I've heard him in discussions with people taking, the vegan standpoint, or explaining why vegans do what they do, and it makes me very proud, because
Yeah.
even though he hasn't made that 100% commitment,
Yeah.
it's ticking away in there, and he's making...
I know some people think that like vegan food is really boring, or that you won't be healthy, or that you won't get enough protein.
Oh no.
Has that been a problem for you?
Yes, I'm
Has that,
completely protein deficient, and I've got no muscles and no energy, and no, it's been absolutely fine. I am not a natural chef. I'm very good at eating food. I'm not brilliant at making it. And so for me, it's been really important to have a really great range of cookery books. I'm really good at following a recipe, and I'm very lucky that I have someone who helps me at home with the meals, and we just choose recipes from these great books, and we have these delicious meals. And I don't feel unhealthy. I feel much healthier, in fact, than I ever did before. And I think my husband, that's what my husband says. He says, you know, everybody would eat vegan food if they knew that it wasn't bland and tasteless and just a salad every time. Yeah. So, yeah, no, I'm also very fortunate that in Bangkok, where we live, there are some really great vegan restaurants too. So I don't feel I'm lacking.
And what would you say are some of the biggest challenges that you faced in the past couple of years?
Interesting, because I think I'd answer the same for both scenarios. So the trickiest, and yet not as tricky as I thought, was the coming out as such to family and friends. Well, not so much to friends, but to family. And I think the first time I went back to the UK and Spain to spend time with family, and I have to kind of say, you know, I don't eat this kind of stuff anymore. It was hard, and it was hard only because I was staying in people's homes, and sometimes they would cook for us, and I don't like to be a burden. I don't want to make things hard for people, and they were great. You know, they were really open and honest, and luckily, you know, we have like a celiac in the family and a vegetarian and that kind of thing. So there were other, you know, dietary requirements anyway. And of course, you know, I offered to cook my own food, and we'd go out for meals and so on. So that was fine. But what I do think is still hard about that is, while they're accepting, they're not necessarily understanding. Okay. And that's the same even, you know, with anybody you meet, a colleague or a stranger or an old friend. You often assume that acceptance should come with understanding, and it doesn't always work that way. So for me, it's hard to engage in conversation around food with anybody, because there are things that I have learnt, and there are things that I believe, and of course there's things they have learnt and things they believe, and they don't necessarily mesh. And I'm a conversationalist. I don't want to stop talking to people, but it's learning when to stop and what to say, and navigating that. It's almost like learning to talk again, in a sense. It's tricky. It's important, and it's something that I'm very aware of now. I'm much more mindful about when I say things, and I'm noticing much more the point at which I've slipped up and gone too far, and think, Nina, you shouldn't have said that. Or here's what you could have said, but that's a learning curve. Yeah,
I know you really love being active. I mean, you're a woman who's got 2 kids, a full-time job, a teaching job. You just a lifelong learner. You're learning so many things. You're studying. You are keep an active lifestyle. You do yoga. You work out. I mean, do you take any supplements or to support these things?
The only thing I do take is a B12 supplement twice a week. Okay.
Is there anything about a vegan lifestyle that's really surprised you?
The amount of learning that I have gone through is incredible. I think as a teacher in this day and age, we talk about fostering lifelong learners and modelling that to the children, and we all think we do that. And I can honestly, hand on heart, say I wasn't a lifelong learner. I wasn't.
Wow.
I enjoyed what I did. I knew what I knew. I might watch the occasional documentary, but it was kind of rare. And then since becoming vegan, I have read so many books, I have watched so many documentaries, I am taking so many courses, I'm having so many rich discussions with people, that the amount of knowledge I've accrued in the last 2 years is probably more than in my whole school life. And I'm loving it. It's kind of made me crave more knowledge, and it's obviously something that I'm passionate about, and And I'm so grateful for that alone, that it's opened up this whole world of knowledge and people that I can share that knowledge with.
For me, I think when I became vegan, like I just made all of these connections with other social justice issues and other sort of environmental issues, and that was a really big aha moment for me.
That's right.
You know, making connections between, you know, the conditions of workers, for example, and then, you know, connecting that with, you know, animal agriculture and things like that. You know, they're all interconnected. You know, we talk as PYP teachers about interconnectedness a lot, and this is one, it's almost like one thing that sort of brings everything together in a way.
That's right.
Really,
I mean, I think it was, is it Kip, the guy from Cowspiracy? I think there was a clip in Cowspiracy or another documentary I saw where he or another person said they were really shocked. It was like a veil had been lifted.
Yeah.
And at the time, I kind of thought that's very poetic, you know. But you know, it's going to be nice for the viewers to hear that. But I totally get it now.
Yeah.
It is like a veil's been lifted, and you are making all those connections and seeing things from a completely different viewpoint, and it's enlightening to do that.
So, if any of the people watching this have any desires or thoughts about, you know, adopting a vegan lifestyle, what tips or great resources would you suggest that they check out?
I would say the 30-Day Vegan Challenge by Colleen Patrick Goodrow is fabulous.
That's like you can buy it from her site, or
I think so. I have the Kindle version. I think you can get the and there's just such a wealth of recipes and blogs and YouTubers. I mean, you could just go on and just type in a couple of keywords and you'd be inundated. But I think that's also a problem. And I think people are sometimes overwhelmed with so much change.
Yeah.
I didn't find it that hard because I knew I'd cut out meat before, so I knew that wasn't too hard for me. And I'm also someone who likes to kind of restrict myself in different ways and
you like
test
a
things
challenge.
out. I do, I love it. But I think for most people, try just something super small. Just try not having cow's milk in your coffee for 2 weeks. You know, try having one meal a day with no meat in. And I think it's those tiny changes that sometimes aren't as satisfying for people. Sometimes people want a big, I did it, I've been vegan for a month. But it's not a sustainable change. If it's going to be long-lasting and real, you need to take small steps, and you need to read, and you need to watch documentaries, watch Forks Over Knives, watch Cowspiracy, watch Earthlings if you can. You know, there's Get Vegucated. You know, there's so many. And just talk to people and try out a new restaurant, or just, you know, next time you're out for a meal, try the vegetarian or the vegan option, and just play around. I think it's not an all or nothing. It's not black or white. Whatever change people makes is a good one.
Step in the right direction for sure. All right. So what do you typically eat in a day?
Right, well, I usually, especially Monday to Friday, have the same breakfast. So my breakfast is oats with, I've got to remember it all now, it's a huge list. Oats with ground flaxseed, maca powder, spirulina, cacao nibs, sometimes a bit of maple syrup, frozen blueberries, and soy milk. I think that's everything.
You do a lot of meal prep at the weekends,
I do,
right?
so Sundays,
Yeah,
that's right. So in the mornings I don't have time to make my own breakfast, so I make them all on a Sunday in little mason jars in the fridge ready to go, and I used to just grab them and eat them in the morning, but now I'm trying to fast a little bit longer, which is really hard for me, but so I'll have them at work during the first break. So that's my breakfast. And then at lunch, I usually, again on Sunday, I have this amazing Instapot that I cook with on a Sunday, and it will be a stew or a soup or basically lots of cooked vegetables, which I'll either have with rice or some other grain or something like that. So I change it up, you know, it might be pumpkin. I try to have lots of greens if possible, try and make sure there's spinach in it. I adore mushrooms, so they often feature heavily. And then in the evening, it's whatever my amazing helper has made for us. So for example, this week we have had falafel burgers one night, we've had couscous salad another night, we had lentil soup another night, so just arrange.
Yeah, sounds delicious and really healthy too. Yes. Fantastic. All right, so let's finish with a funny question.
Okay.
So, what would you say to people that say that we were meant to eat meat because of these things? What would you say to those people?
If I was feeling in a cheeky mood, I would probably say, oh great, you go ahead, you go and try and rip that chicken carcass to pieces with those teeth, and I'll chew on this bit of lettuce. See how we go. But I guess
Or
if
try and take down a
run after a gazelle, catch it.
Yeah, with these big claws.
Yeah. Well, but if I was being, more sensible, which I'm trying to be, I'm, more willing to educate people if they want to listen, then I would say, well, having canines is one feature of a carnivore. But if you look at the canine of a tiger or a lion or a baboon or whatever other animal you're referring to, you will notice that there's a huge difference between their canine and our canine. And you also need to take into account other physiological features such as the length of our digestive tract. Carnivore's digestive tract is much shorter because you need to whip the meat through there quickly because it does nasty stuff when it stays in there too long, whereas we have a very long digestive tract, much like herbivores. So there's a lot more that you can go into too. So I think we need to look at those things too, but also it's not, nothing in this world is black or white. It's not I'm a carnivore or I'm a herbivore. We are an animal that is very good at surviving, and just because we can eat meat doesn't mean we should.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. That's it for the questions. Thank you so much for coming here today. And I hope you enjoyed this video and getting to meet and to know Nina a little bit. And hopefully we'll be back with another video for you next week. Thanks for watching.
Thanks. Bye.